Recording.
Hi, everybody. Today we will be talking about how psychology influences the workplace.
So we are going to start in 1911 with author Drew Scott. He was the first applied psychologist attempting to solve business problems, and his ideas started the foundation for industrial psychology. His main contributions to the field was his articles about advertising and his book also about advertising, and his second book that was Increasing Human Efficiency in Business, 1911. In this book, he explained and suggests ways of increasing worker productivity through the means of psychological principles. Scott's findings would add fuel to the fire that was the industrial psychology movement. Now enter the one that really started it off.
Hugo Munsterberg. He was a German-American psychologist that was one of the pioneers of applied psychology along with Scott. He was known as the father of industrial psychology. He had the greatest impact on the industrial psychology movement by publishing his book called The Psychology and Industrial Efficiency in 1913, which overall suggested that hiring workers who had personalities and mental abilities best suited to certain types of work was the best way to increase motivation, performance, and retention. In his book, he discussed many other key contributions that apply to this topic. The first one is the best man possible. In these chapters within the book, they focus on vocational guidance and how to select the best employees for the job. The second contributor was the best work possible, and this talks about training and the effects of working conditions on the employees, such as fatigue. And the third one is the best possible effect. And in these chapters, they focus on advertising and marketing. Their ideas started what we now consider the industrial psychology movement, and industrial psychology focuses on applying psychological principles in the workplace to improve, evaluate, and predict job performance. There are three main components to industrial psychology, these of which being hiring personnel, promoting personnel, and employee training.
So the first component of industrial psychology is hiring personnel, and that is the process of identifying and encouraging qualified individuals to apply for jobs in given organization. A good example of personnel hiring tests is Army Alpha and Beta test that was developed by Robert Yerkes and Scott in 1917 to 18. And the reasoning for this was because there was a need to mediate and differentiate between the many World War I applicants by gauging the abilities of individual soldiers by measuring their intelligence. By doing this, Army personnel were able to assign specific recruits to jobs that they felt would benefit the Army in the best way possible. There were found The tests were found to be successful with a few drawbacks. For example, IQ testing, IQ testing not being so much reliable, but were later modified and to a certain extent are still used today.
Similar to Scott's idea with the alpha beta testing, Munsterberg wanted to show that psychology could contribute to the process of fitting work and workers together. In this example of selecting personnel, Munsterberg examined hiring drivers slash operators or motormen for electrical railways known as trolleys within a given city. So the motormen had to stay on schedule whilst looking out for obstacles such as pedestrians, horses, etc. And at that time, there weren't really any stoplights. So on average, there were about 50,000 accidents per year created by the motormen. Some motormen had a better records than others when it came to accidents, so the Boston Elevated Railway asked Munsterberg to develop a way to distinguish between competent and accident-prone drivers. He believed that there was two ways to determine this, and the first one was simulating as a whole the essential process involved in successful work, and in this case, that's driving. And the second one is breaking down the work into sub-processes involved in a successful work. So with this, Munsterberg created an apparatus that would simulate a regular path taken by the trolleys and incorporated different obstacles that they might encounter along their journey. And the motormen would be instructed to perform the given task of the apparatus and were asked to identify the oncoming objects that could end up on the track and be a danger. In order to calculate the results, Munsterberg combined time and errors into a weighted measure and concluded that the simulation had validity, and the reports from the driver stated that his design procedure in the apparatus involved the kinds of decisions made when they were driving.
Moving on, the second component of industrial psychology is promoting personnel. This process, it is the process of advancing said personnel's position rank in organizational hierarchy system.
And the third component of industrial psychology is employee training, and this is the implementation of various programs to advance an employee's skill, expertise, and education on the given material.
1930, the Hall Thorstons investigated if some aspect of organization would influence employee effectiveness, such as elimination, wage incentives, and rest pauses. And those studies started what we know as organizational psychology.
So, organizational psychology focuses on applying psychological principles to understanding how organizations impact and interact with an individual's effectiveness. This can be broken down into three components as well, known as motivation, satisfaction, and commitment. So, for motivation, this can be described as an energetic force that exists within and outside of an employee in the workplace that drives them to develop a sense of direction, intensity, and duration. Satisfaction can be described as the overall feelings an employee has about their given workplace and the evaluations they make about their job. And commitment is the characterization of the employee's relationship with the company and how it influences their willingness to stay or leave said company.
So, in 1970, APA combined and formed IOP psychology, which is the combined form of industrial and organizational psychology. The main goal of IOP psychology is to use psychological principles to investigate how to increase the effectiveness of the employees in the workplace, resulting in a bigger financial gain for the company they work for. Now, instead of them being their own components, they are combined. So here is an example of how IOP psychology use psychological principles to conduct studies to investigate how to increase the effectiveness of their organization. So, in this study conducted in 1997, Furhan and Bradley, they are already known by other psychological studies that extroverted people uh, concentrate better in stimulant environments. So they wanted to test if music could be a stimulant factor on the extroverted environments to increase their effectiveness. So they tested if the extroverted people, when listening to music, they would be more effective in performing some tasks. And in their results, they found that indeed, extroverted people, when listening to music, were better in memory tasks.
Perfect. Another small example that can be given, actually, I feel like has to be derived from Munsterberg's simulation experiment. At my community college, we had an aviation program, and it is common practice for the aviation students to use a flight simulator when they are learning to fly because it has been proven to be informative and a realistic experience as well. Another personal example I can give about IO psychology applying to the workplace is in the job field when I worked at Applebee's. So my first week on the shifts, they required me to watch a bunch of pre-recorded how-to videos that contained information on the company's atmosphere and what the company expected from me as an employee. And I honestly felt like this is a very 21st century way of training because I had never really watched videos, but more shadowed somebody when I was on the job. And I do feel like Scott and Munsterberg may agree or may not agree on whether this was effective or not. So that's up to you to decide. But
all in all, it is absolutely necessary to respect and realize where your roots came from and how it shaped the working class world that we are living in today. Thank you for watching. Okay, so